Welcome to today's deep dive. We're tackling a question that I think we've all asked at some point. How do we even begin to look for proof of God?
It's a question that's been around for centuries.
It really has. So to help us unpack it today, we're diving into Timothy Keller's The Reason for God.
Specifically, the intermission section.
Yeah. Which I thought was so interesting that he kind of put that right in the middle of the book.
It's very strategically placed.
It is. It's like he knew we'd need a pause.
Yeah, he recognizes that in the first part of the book, he's dealing with some pretty heavy doubts about Christianity. And so this section is a really nice bridge to the reasons for belief that he explores in the rest of the book.
It's true. And you know what I appreciated right off the bat? He acknowledges the elephant in the room about Christianity. All the different denominations and the traditions, it can seem really overwhelming. Like, where do you even begin?
It can feel like a maze.
Totally. But he does a great job, I think, of like weaving that all together and finding the common thread. He's like, these are the core beliefs that really unite all of these different branches.
Yeah, and that's actually essential to his approach because by focusing on the shared foundations of like Orthodox, Catholic, and Protestant denominations, he can kind of sidestep all those potential distractions and get right to the heart of what really matters.
Exactly. So he establishes that common ground, but then he throws this curveball, this whole concept of strong rationalism. This idea that like people want absolute undeniable proof for God. Like, show me the mathematical equation for God and then, then I'll believe.
Yeah, exactly.
Good.
Like, where's the photograph?
Right. But he makes this really interesting point. He uses the example of Darwin's theory of evolution.
Which, by the way, is very widely accepted.
Totally. And he points out that even that can't be like definitively 100% proven.
Right. It's a theory.
So if we don't hold scientific theories to this, like crazy high standard of strong rationalism, then why should faith be any different?
That is a good question.
It really makes you think.
Yeah.
We accept those theories based on, evidence and how well they explain things, not on some kind of absolute unshakable proof.
Right.
So how does that apply then to how we approach this question of God?
Well, this is where Keller brings in this idea of critical rationality.
Ooh, I like it.
Which is less about like finding arguments that are going to convince every single person on the planet.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Right. But more about figuring out, okay, which beliefs seem the most reasonable based on the evidence that we have available to us.
Okay, so instead of needing like proof that would hold up in a court of law, it's more about like, what's the explanation that makes the most sense when I really look at everything?
Yes, precisely. And to kind of help illustrate this, Keller uses a metaphor that I think is so powerful. He compares knowing God to characters in a play, trying to understand the playwright.
Now, that's an analogy I can get behind. All right, so walk me through this. How does this whole playwright idea relate to knowing God?
Okay, so imagine you're watching a play.
Right.
You see the characters, you see the story, you see the themes that are being explored. And from all of that, you can infer things about the playwright. You can pick up on their style, maybe even something about their personality, their worldview, just from the work itself. But you can't truly know that playwright, not deeply, not personally, without them actually revealing themselves to you directly.
That's a really good point. It's like you can analyze a painting and like understand all the techniques and like appreciate the skill, but to know the artist's heart, their inspiration, that requires a different kind of connection.
Absolutely. And that's where, according to the Christian faith, Jesus comes in. He's not just another character in the play. He is the playwright himself stepping onto the stage.
So instead of just like reading the play's script, now we're like meeting the playwright, hearing their heartbeat, like understanding their motivations more fully.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
So we're moving away from this need for like absolute irrefutable proof. And instead, we're kind of moving into this realm of critical rationality, this more, nuanced, thoughtful approach to a question that has literally haunted humanity for centuries. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, where do we go from here?
So we left off with this idea of Jesus being the playwright, like actually stepping onto the stage of his own play.
It's a pretty wild thought when you really let it sink in, right?
It is. So instead of just looking for like traces of this playwright in the world, now we're saying, okay, we're actually encountering the author directly.
Exactly. And that's a game changer for Christians because it's not just about, deciphering ancient texts or trying to chase down miracles. It becomes about a relationship with the one who claims to be the ultimate revelation of God.
Okay, so that makes me wonder, if we're saying Jesus is supposed to be this ultimate revelation,
Yeah.
then how does that change how we view things like even Scripture or our own personal experiences?
Yeah.
Are those all just different scenes in this grand play?
It's so interesting to think about, right? Because when you look at it through that lens, everything takes on a whole new dimension.
It does.
I mean, scripture, for example, it's no longer just this collection of, stories and rules.
right.
It's the story of God's interaction with humanity leading up to and culminating in Jesus.
So we're not just like reading the play's script, we're meeting the playwright,
Yeah.
like hearing their heartbeat,
Yes,
understanding their motivations on a deeper level.
exactly. And it goes beyond just scripture. I mean, this perspective can change how we see our own experiences, too.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, think about it. Even those everyday moments,
Mhm.
the joy, the connection, maybe even the doubt, the struggle,
Yeah.
those can all take on a whole new meaning when we view them as potentially being part of this much larger narrative.
So that sense of awe that I feel when I look up at the stars,
Yes.
or, the comfort of a friend's support, or even like wrestling with a really difficult question,
Yeah, totally.
those could all be potential encounters with the divine.
Exactly. Like the playwright is kind of leaving us little notes and hints and whispers throughout the entire play, like inviting us to look deeper, to kind of connect with the story on a more personal level.
Okay, but like being honest,
Sure. Yeah.
sometimes it feels like those notes are written in invisible ink.
Right.
Like, how am I supposed to know if what I'm experiencing is like truly, the divine playwright at work
Like,
or just, life happening?
I mean, that's the $1,000,000 question, isn't it?
It feels like it.
And there's no easy answer.
Right.
That's where faith comes in.
Okay.
That leap of trust that maybe, just maybe, there's more to this life than meets the eye.
So it's not about like silencing all my doubts
Yeah.
or pretending like I have it all figured out.
Not at all. In fact, I think sometimes that questioning, that wrestling with doubt, that can actually be part of the journey.
Really?
Yeah, because it's in those moments of honesty, of vulnerability, that we might actually be the most open to hearing the playwright's voice.
It's like we're learning to listen with a new set of ears,
Yeah.
to see with fresh eyes. But that takes trust, doesn't it?
It does.
To trust that the playwright is real and that they have something to say and that the story is worth engaging with, even when it's like confusing or challenging.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, this whole idea of trust, of faith, it's central to the Christian worldview, but it's not about blind acceptance.
Yeah.
It's about choosing to participate in the story, even with all of its complexities.
So we're not just like these passive audience members in this grand play of life.
No.
We're active participants.
We're in it.
We are. Okay, but how do we even begin to like discern those whispers of the divine
Right.
amidst all the noise of like everyday life? Are we talking like flashing neon signs, or are the clues a little more subtle?
Well, that's where this idea of revelation comes in, and we'll get into that right after this.
All right, let's dive into this whole revelation thing. It sounds kind of, I don't know, big and mysterious.
It can be. But really, at its core, revelation is about God choosing to make himself known to us. Like, if this playwright we keep talking about wanted us to really get a specific scene, maybe they'd leave a note in the margins or something.
Ooh, or like whisper a clue in our ear even.
Exactly. Communicating directly with us.
I like that. Okay, so has revelation always looked the same way throughout history? Or is it more like a spectrum?
You're asking all the right questions. You're right. Different faith traditions, even within a Christianity, have different views on this. Some put a lot of emphasis on those big, dramatic events.
Oh yeah, like Moses in the burning bush, right?
Exactly. But others focus more on those quieter, internal experiences.
Like what?
Like feeling a sense of peace when you're praying, or maybe sensing your conscience nudging you in a certain direction.
So it's not one size fits all.
Not at all. Revelation can be as loud as a thunderclap or as subtle as your own heartbeat. It's a whole spectrum.
Wow, okay. So how do we even begin to like make sense of it all? Especially, we've been looking at this whole question of God through the lens of Keller's book with this idea of critical rationality.
Right, and that's key here. We don't just accept things blindly. We weigh the evidence, consider all sides, and see what resonates, what feels true.
And I think that's what I appreciate about Keller's approach. So for Christians specifically, we've been saying that Jesus is this ultimate revelation.
Yeah, the clearest picture we have of God.
Exactly.
Mm.
So then where does that leave everything else? Scripture, personal experiences, even our doubts, Are those all part of Revelation too?
You're getting to the heart of it. For Christians, Jesus is like the most complete picture we have of God. But that doesn't mean other avenues of revelation are meaningless. It's like, think of a puzzle.
Really?
Jesus is like the picture on the box, the
Exactly.
full image. But each piece, each experience, each word in Scripture, it all contributes to that bigger picture.
Okay, so all those things, like feeling connected to something bigger when I'm out in nature or feeling truly known and loved, even those times when I'm really wrestling with my faith.
Those could all be pieces of the puzzle.
Wow. So how do we start to recognize them as such, as those whispers?
Well, it starts with paying attention, noticing those moments, those feelings, and asking ourselves, what might God be trying to show me through this?
So don't shut down those doubts.
No way. Some might even say those are the times when we're most open to revelation, those moments when our hearts are a little more open to something beyond what we think we understand.
So it's like we're knocking on the playwright's door,
Yes.
maybe even demanding an answer.
Maybe, and maybe, just maybe, that very act of seeking, that's what opens the door to a deeper understanding.
Wow. It strikes me that this whole conversation has been kind of a revelation in itself.
Mhm.
We start off with this question about how we even look for proof of God, and look where we ended up.
It really just goes to show that sometimes the most profound discoveries happen when we least expect them.
When we're willing to, set aside our assumptions and embrace the mystery and be open to being surprised. So, to everyone listening, what if the most amazing story isn't found in some dusty old book, but it's woven into your own life? What would it look like to really start paying attention, listening for those whispers, those nudges, to embrace the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the playwright is whispering your name?
And that, my friends, might be the greatest revelation of all.